Before we get into today's video, I did want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope everybody's having a wonderful week so far. I hope everybody's still hanging on. It's 2024. We're still seeing how the rest of the year is going to go. Hopefully it's going to be wonderful, the best year yet, right? Right. Okay. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about a situation that happened quite a while ago. Now, this case or situation, there are so many twists and turns in this, and there are many different theories about what happened. It's involving a bunch of different things. There are people that think there are other entities involved. There are people that think it was something simple. There are people that think that foreign governments were involved in this, and it's a very intriguing story. So make sure you guys stay all the way to the end, because the twists and turns, it's going to be all over the place. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your front door. Factor's team of gourmet chefs creates each meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. The sun is shining, spring is here, and warm and sunnier days are calling. So fuel up for them with Factor's no prep and no mess meals. And with Factor, you can meet your wellness goals thanks to their menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. You can keep your kitchen time to a minimum because Factor meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so no shopping, no prepping, no cooking, or no big cleaning up. And with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. I can always count on Factor, and Factor is a lifesaver for me, especially on those very busy days. When I have my Factor meals in the refrigerator and I am in the hustle and bustle of life and I am hungry, by going and grabbing my Factor meals helps me from going into the cabinet and grabbing for chips and anything else that I can quickly get and eat. And like I've told y'all plenty of times before, I love their chocolate protein shakes. If you want to try Factor though, all you gotta do is go to factor75.com, use my code ChristinaRandall50, and you can get 50% off of your first box plus 20% off of your next month's orders. Yes, all you gotta do is go to factor75.com, use my code ChristinaRandall50, and you can get 50% off of your first order and 20% off of your next month's order today. Thanks again, Factor. So, okay, let's talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident. Whoa. So in January of 1959, and before you click off the video and say, I don't care about what happened back in 1959, you care, okay? You do care. So back in January of 1959, stay with me here. 9 young skiers went on what they considered a super exciting hiking trip in Russia's Ural Mountains. 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov was a radio engineering student, and he was the leader of this group. He was described by people that knew him as very knowledgeable. He was a very smart and intelligent person. He was an athlete. He was strong, and anybody that knew him said that he was always prepared. His friends all said that they could always rely on him. So he's the leader of this group. Now, originally, this group actually consisted of 10 people. It was going to be 8 men and 2 women to go on this hike, but one person would later back out for health reasons. All 9 of them were students at the same university, and each of them were experienced grade 2 hikers with ski tour experience. So these 9 hikers that are going to go on this hike through the mountains are all experienced, okay? They all were planning on receiving the highest certification level, which is a grade 3, once they returned back from this hike that they were going on. So this hike that they're all getting ready to go on was going to be for 190 miles. Okay, it was going to take them 16 days, which definitely seems like a lot for somebody that does not hike extensively like that. But when you think about it being 9 college students who were all experienced, like how fun, right? And if you're going to go on a long hike, who better to do it with than 8 other than yourself, if you're the 9th one, than 8 other very experienced hikers. Now, according to Zenaida, the trip started off on a really good note. She had written about this in the group's joint journal. The group actually had like a handful of diaries and a few cameras with them. And what it seems like is all of the people that were in the group were supposed to write a little bit in the journal every day, which is a super cool idea. Now, the photos show just how excited and happy that they all were. Unfortunately, none of them would ever have the ability to tell this story because a month after setting out on their trip, they were all found unalive. On January 26th, the hikers hitched a ride on the back of a truck to get to their location. This is when Yuri says that his sciatica was hurting, and this is when he decided to turn around and head back home. This decision is what would ultimately save Yuri's life. The next day, the rest of the group continued on their journey by foot up the mountain. Now, according to the journal entries, on February 1st, the hikers made their way out late in the day. The route that they had chosen had been surprisingly difficult, even for them, and they ended up walking 2.5 miles before putting up their tent on a slope just 10 miles away from Mount Odorin, where they were headed according to their last journal entry and final photos. So they set out on the end of January, and their friends and family members were waiting for them to show up at the place that they would end at on February 12th. When they did not show up on February 12th, originally, people just thought, okay, anything could have happened. You know, the weather's bad, something happened. They're behind a day. Remember, this is back in 1959. It's not like they could FaceTime or make a phone call. When they didn't show up February 13th or February 14th, people just kind of thought, okay, again, it could have really have been anything. But when they did not show up by February 20th, over a week past due, which when you think about it, if it's over a week before anybody hears from them, really anything could have happened by then. This is when a search party team was sent out to look for the 9 young hikers. After 6 days of searching, the searchers came across a shocking discovery. They found a tent that had been sliced open from the inside. They also found 9 sets of footprints which led from like the edge of the nearby woods a mile away. When the search team followed these footprints to see where they would end up, this is when the nearly naked and deceased bodies of 2 of the hikers were found. It was 21-year-old Yuri D and 23-year-old Yuri K. They were found under a tree and surrounded by what seemed to be the remnants of a fire. So to the search team, it looked like the 2 of them were like under this tree, starting a fire, trying to keep warm. As the search team continued to look, a few days later, 3 more were found deceased. They found the leader of the group, who was 23-year-old Igor. They found 22-year-old Zenaida and 23-year-old Rustim. The search team continued to look for the other hikers, and it took them quite a while to find the other 4. As a matter of fact, they did not find the bodies of the other 4 until the spring, when a lot of the snow had melted. And this was 23-year-old Nikolai, 20-year-old Lumila, 21-year-old Alexander, and 38-year-old Semyon. These last 4 were actually found in a 187 feet deep ravine in the woods. These 4 had the most clothing on, and seemingly they looked like they were wearing the clothes of the others, which investigators took to mean that they had gone back and taken the clothes off of the ones that had already passed away, like to stay warm. But the question was, if these hikers were able to go back to their friends' bodies and remove their clothes and put them on themselves, why wouldn't they just go back to the campsite where they had all of the materials and the things that they needed in order to stay warm? Now, when they did autopsies on the hikers, they found that some of them had chest fractures that were so severe that they were compared to injuries usually seen in a car crash. The photos of the chest plates of some of these hikers, it was like they were just broken. It was so bizarre how they were injured. It was also found that one of the female hikers was missing her tongue, her eyes, part of her lips, and some of her facial tissue. And there was also a fragment of her skull that was missing. One of the hikers, who was a male, still had a camera hanging basically attached around his neck. Unfortunately, the film was too damaged when it was developed and the pictures were all just blurs, so they couldn't really tell what he was taking pictures of. The investigators believed that there should have been 4 cameras in total, but they never found them all. Now, a criminal investigation was immediately opened. However, it concluded that a spontaneous power of nature had caused the hikers' deaths. And you can only imagine, like, how this spread in the newspapers there in Russia, because again, this is 9 experienced, very experienced hikers to leave their tent, cutting it from the inside to walk off to their deaths. None of it made any sense. And then again, the way that their bodies were found. The Soviets, which are Russians, but at the time it was still the Soviet Union, strangely kept this case sealed and classified until the 1970s, which then brought global attention to the incident. So they had kept it on the hush. Now, after decades of speculation and theories, in February of 2019, this is why I said that this case is actually still relevant to this day, the investigation into the incident was reopened in Russia. Relatives to the hikers, the media, and the public all begged prosecutors to find the truth because they felt like they were being lied to and that something was being covered up. There were many, many theories about this situation. There were people that believed that it was an alien attack. There were lots of people, and still are, that believe that it was an abominable snowman attack. And these theories ranged all the way to potential radiation fallout from secret weapon testing. However, this 2019 investigation only took 3 theories into account, and all 3 were weather related. So it's kind of like, why even reopen this case all these years later if you're only even going to consider weather-related incidents, especially in the conditions that some of these bodies were found. Again, a few of them had their chest so damaged, it looked like they had been in a severe car crash or car accident. A spokesperson that was basically over this investigation said that crime, any kind of criminal anything, was absolutely out of the question. There was not a single bit of proof, not even a bit of indirect proof to favor a criminal version of events. This person said that it was either an avalanche or a snow slab or a hurricane. Prosecutors released a 400-page file of original case documents and materials at a press conference and announced that they were going to visit the Dyatlov Pass site in person with rescue workers, experts, and forensic specialists. Now, everybody was basically waiting on pins and needles about this because, again, even though this happened back in 1959, family members, friends, and it was always like this looming thing. What happened to these 9 students, experienced hikers that were found in this condition all these years ago that nobody got any answers for? And so now that Russia is reopening the case in 2019, they're giving out these answers that are not making a lot of sense, but since they agreed to send these professionals literally out to the scene, this gave a lot of people hope that they were going to actually get real answers this time. But keep in mind that this is 2019 when this is going on, and the incident happened back in 1959. Everything's going to be different, right? Ultimately, the federal Russian investigation in 2019, and they ended up doing another investigation the following year in 2020, concluded that a slab avalanche, which is when a big slab of snow like breaks away from the deeper layer of snow, it ends up sliding down in big chunks, is most likely what ended up killing all 9 hikers, which, okay, I'm going to try to hold my opinion into the end because especially, the avalanche theory. A lot of people believe the avalanche theory, okay? But on top of that, 2 Swiss scientists agreed with this conclusion. Now, people definitely remained skeptical and definitely had a lot of questions of how that happened in that way. A lot of people would say that a snow slab incident was inconsistent with the evidence at the scene. There was actually a lower than usual snow angle and no signs of an avalanche risk at the time and no sign of what could have triggered something like that. Plus, the extremely unusual injuries of the hikers. Now, even though people press that, the scientists would argue back that there was evidence of a slab avalanche, and they believed that this avalanche or this big chunk of snow could have basically easily formed when the snow piled up near the hikers' campsite. So I'm going to put this in layman's terms the best way that I can. Basically, the formal statement or conclusion of this was that they believed that the way that these experienced hikers and campers, again, who did this all the time, the way that they set up their tent is what led to the slab avalanche. And they believed that this created severe yet non-fatal injuries to the hikers before they died later of hypothermia. So they think that they set the tent up in a way that created this avalanche. It came down, gave them all these injuries, and then this is when they left and eventually froze to death. The coroner came out and said that they agreed that their autopsies actually supported this avalanche theory, and this coroner said that they believed that the avalanche actually fell on top of them while they were possibly sleeping, which wouldn't have killed them, but it did injure them and it forced them to run out of their tent into the cold night without proper clothing, which then led them to dying of hypothermia. But then officials also said that they didn't claim that they had basically solved this mystery and that since no one survived to tell the story, but they were rather just showing what they believed was like the most probable scenario out of everything. Now let's get into some of the other theories. So they're saying avalanche fell on top of them. That was the injuries. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I don't think that that's what happened, especially after seeing the x-ray of the chest plate. I don't see that being an avalanche, but I'm no professional. I'm just, a ding-dong with a lot of opinions, okay? We're going to talk about them. So let's go through some of these theories first. A lot of the public just absolutely, and myself included, could not believe that an avalanche could have been this cause because, like I said before, there were no visible signs of an avalanche at the scene. An avalanche would have most likely left like obvious signs. The bodies that were covered in snow were only covered in a very small layer of snow, like they had passed away there and it continued to snow. There was also no evidence of damage to the trees in the area that you would typically see with an avalanche. So when an avalanche comes down a mountain, the trees bend because the snow a lot of the times either bends them, cracks them, breaks them, but there's definitely some sort of sign on the trees that an avalanche came down, but there was none in this situation. There was even over 100 expeditions in the same area after this incident, and none of those expeditions experienced any avalanche-like conditions. So they were the only ones, and there was absolutely no sign of it. It was almost like just a theory that they put out there to just dead the situation, which is weird because why would they even reopen it in 2019 from something that happened back in 1959? And a lot of people were even more upset with this answer because they knew the 9 hikers and they knew that they would not set up camp in an area where there could be an avalanche. They knew to look for those types of things. Also, the footprints leading away from the tent were inconsistent with a group of 9 people running away from something. It looked like they were literally walking normally. If an avalanche comes in the middle of the night when you're sleeping, you're most likely not going to get up and just walk in a single file line all calmly. There's going to be footprints at least backing up. Oh my goodness, what happened? Is everybody okay? But that's not what that's not what they found. They found normal walking single file footprints. One author actually concluded that the wind created a vortex which can produce an infrasound capable of inducing panic attacks in humans. According to this theory, the infrasound generated by the wind as it passed over the top of the mountain was responsible for causing physical discomfort and mental distress in the hikers. So this author claims that because of this wind over the mountains that made this like insane sound to them, it caused all these hikers to panic. And this author also believes that the hikers were then, because of this panic, driven to leave the tent by whatever means necessary, and they fled down the slope. And the author believes that by the time the hikers would be like down the hill, that infrasound would have stopped by then and they would regain their composure, but at this point they would be in the dark and unable to return back to their shelter. He says that the traumatic injuries suffered by 3 of the victims were the result of them stumbling over the edge of the ravine in the darkness and then landing on rocks at the bottom. Although I don't agree with that theory, to me, even that sounds different than the avalanche theory. Again, especially because when they came back, there's no sign of an avalanche. Now, some thought that the military might have been involved. It is actually highly speculated that the campsite fell within the path of the Soviet parachute mine exercise. This theory alleges that the hikers were woken up by loud explosions, then they fled the tent in a barefoot panic and found themselves unable to get back for supplies back to their tent. After some of the members froze to death, the others used their clothing and then were fatally injured by possibly one of these parachute mines. And there are records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet back then, by the Soviet military in the area around the time that the hikers were there. Parachute mines detonate when they are still in the air rather when they're striking the Earth's surface, and they can cause injuries similar to those experienced by these hikers. Another theory, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this one, is that these hikers suffered from a phenomenon called paradoxal undressing. And this is when people are found like when they're dying, they're like on their way to pass over, okay, from hypothermia. Some of them will actually take off their clothes because their brain interprets this extreme cold as actually feeling so hot that you take all of your clothes off. But like I said before, some of the hikers appeared to have put on more clothes, so I don't know if that theory is accurate. It seems more plausible that when the other ones passed away, the other hikers took their clothes to try to keep themselves warm. Another theory is that there was testing of radiological weapons in this area, and this is based mostly on the discovery of radioactivity on some of the clothes, as well as the descriptions of their bodies by relatives. Like, why would some of these hikers have radioactive chemicals of some sort on them? The relatives said that the hikers actually had orange skin and gray hair, which is very interesting. And let's not forget that originally the Soviets suppressed all of these files. They suppressed this case, and some would say that a lot of the evidence that they had found when this incident actually happened was completely covered up, and you can't find it to this day. Now, when the survivor, remember in the beginning, we talked about this. There was originally going to be 10 that was going to go on this hike. He ended up having the severe back pain, the sciatica pain, which ended up having him turn back, which I bet he was so upset, you guys, because they were all level 2s, and this was the last hike that they needed to become the highest level, the most experience that they could get at that time. I don't know if it's still the same. And he was all packed up and ready to go, and he had to turn around and go back because of his sciatica. I bet you he felt so sad. This survivor was asked what he thought actually happened. Now, his name was Ural as well, and he maintained until he passed away in 2013 that he believed without a shadow of a doubt that the military was involved. He believed that his friends stumbled across a military exercise, and he said that they were all expert hikers, they were all expert skiers, and they were all very, very well equipped to handle situations like avalanches or snowstorms. He even said that when the military found the campsite, that they were far more concerned with what these skiers were doing in that area versus what actually happened to them. And even worse, when he was asked to identify his friends' belongings from the scene, some of the items didn't even belong to any of them. It's almost like somebody had went in and took a bunch of their stuff and put a bunch of like random stuff in their place for some strange reason. Ural would also go on to say, and making a pretty darn good point, that if something as mundane as an avalanche caused the death of his friends, why did the government close the case so quickly? And why did they mark it as classified? And of course, because of the radiation, there is the alien theory and the spooky tale of the abominable snowman. What do I think happened? I absolutely think that the government was involved in some way. For some reason, and I'm truly just pulling this out of nowhere, okay, just whatever. Because of the way that their chests were injured, I can see if the military there was doing testing in that area, them coming across that tent at the campsite and yelling at them, making them get out. You know, they're cutting their ways out, trying to get out as fast as they can, and maybe taking the back of one of their weapons, one of the guns that they were carrying, and beating them in the chest, which would break their chest plate like that, then making them leave. You know, following them, they died, some of them froze to death, some of, whatever. But I definitely think the military was involved some way, somehow. I think that's why it was covered up so quickly as well. As far as the condition that some of the bodies were found in, where there was eyes missing and, parts of faces missing and stuff, this is also where a lot of people think that aliens could have been involved, and there was alien testing and a lot of rumors that have been going on around about that for 100 years. I just think animals. I think animals found their bodies, and that's what I think happened. But I definitely agree with Ural that the military was involved in some way, somehow. And I also think that's why they reopened it in 2019. I think that they were trying to possibly figure out what they were doing back in 1959, which is why they reopened the case and started looking at everything again, because it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. How are they going to figure that out? How are they going to find out what happened back then anyways? I find it hard to believe that 9 experienced hikers would just get out of their tent and leave their safety, their belongings, their little heater that they had in there, everything, to just leave walking in the middle of the night. Something intervened, and I don't believe it was an avalanche. What do you guys think? Have y'all heard about this? It's so disturbing, okay, for multiple reasons. Many reasons, but you think about, like, say you have a child, an adult child, right? You guys know that we have a 23-year-old son who's in the military. If he's going to go on a trip or you're a young person or whatever age, you're going to go on a trip and you're experienced and you're going to go with 8 other people or 9 other people, that's a freaking safe trip. That's a trip that you're expecting everything's going to be okay. Even if something happens, you got other people there that are trained in CPR and all kinds of stuff. And for 9 of them all of them to end up like this, it's so crazy. And for the government to make it classified that quick, it was a cover up. Y'all let me know what y'all think down below. Other than that, I love y'all. Thank y'all for watching this video, and I will see y'all in the next one. Love you guys. Bye.